One. Hello, beautiful woman. Welcome back to the podcast.
Hello,
Um,
hello.
I've got a really exciting guest for you today. I was recently on her podcast, and now I get to have another juicy conversation with her. And I think y'all are really going to benefit from this conversation and the value that she's going to be bringing. So, hey, Crystal, how are you?
Hello, hello. I'm super, super excited to be here and just serve your audience and see what we can talk about and how the conversation's going to go.
I know it's going to be so fun, especially after our last conversation, too. Like, we flow very well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so why don't you go ahead and start off by telling this community a little bit about you and how you got into doing the work that you do?
So, the 2-minute story of who I am is I am a first generation. Um, I'm first generation being born here. My parents grew up in Mexico. They were born in Mexico. I think they were like 18, 17 when they were like, hey, we want to go to, my dad originally said, I'm going to go to America. I'm going to make money and then I'll come back and build our house and we're going to build our family. My mom was like, nope, if you go, I'm leaving with you. So they actually came here legally.
Mhm.
They traveled they had to pay somebody to get them in and they made it here. And I was born here.
Yeah.
And seeing them, my dad instilled in me this very independent role as a little kid. I'm their firstborn. My parents don't speak English. I very quickly, like at age 8, I was making appointments. I was translating. Like
Wow.
I kind of took on the role of taking care of my parents, but I didn't know this at the time.
Yeah.
Then my siblings were born and I was always trying to take care of them. But my dad always instilled this like line in me that I want you to do better than I did. I want you to have a better life than I did. And it was always this this like this heavy weight now looking back at it of I need to make this life count because I don't know my grandparents. I don't know my aunts. We never grew up having family because all our family was in Mexico, but my parents couldn't take us because they were in this country legally. They were actually legally here till I was 21.
Wow.
That's a separate story that I can share, but I ended up being the one that went through the system and I applied for them to be here. I became responsible of them financially at age 21 and I was able to get them to be here legally. But in that whole journey, I became a very hustle and grind girl.
Yeah.
Like, let me graduate middle school, first one in my family to ever do that. Let me graduate high school. Let me graduate college. Let me graduate the university. Let me go to graduate school. Like, I just kept going and going and going. And I remember, Sarah, I was like probably 10 years old. And at 10 years old, having this thought of like, I'm never going to be poor in my life.
Mm.
And I was like a 10-year-old kid. Now I see my niece and my nephews. I'm like, how did I had this thought? But my thought was, I have to do whatever I can to get to the class where everybody has a decent job, a decent career, and where I'm no longer struggling.
Yeah.
And then my dad always telling me, hey, you need to do something with your life. You need to do something with your life. I ended up going into teaching. I
Mm.
went into teaching. I was a teacher for 6 years. I did middle school and I did elementary. And then something happened when I was doing that, when I was teaching, that I realized somebody was living my life, but it wasn't me.
Yep.
And I was falling in this cycle of what is wrong with me? I have a career, I have a family, I have a fiance, I'm about to get married. What is wrong with me? I'm the youngest teacher in the district at this point. And I went through like a very deep cycle of wondering what is wrong with me, one, but two, why can't I be grateful for the life that I have?
Yeah.
And that put me down through a spiral where I basically ran away from my own life. I called off my wedding. I stopped talking to my parents. I sold my house. I just ran away from my life, ended up fast forward meeting this guy. And I think I just settled with this human being and I went through the shittiest time,
Mm.
um, the disrespect, the way I was being treated, just nobody in my life. I had never gone through with anybody through what I went through. And only for that to end up falling through. And then my thought at that point was like, there's something wrong with me. I can't be happy. Nobody wants me. I hurt everybody that I love. What is wrong with me? And I went through this big cycle. I ended up falling into personal development, went through retreats, went through an event, found breath work. My mind was like, what just happened? I didn't talk to anybody. Why am I crying? Why am I feeling? I
Yeah.
do not like to feel. I don't like to do that. I chased the teacher down and I was like, what just happened? They gave me the rundown. I got certified in breathwork 2 different times. I got certified in trauma. And through this journey, I started a podcast and I was like, hey, maybe this podcast could serve somebody else that's feeling what I once felt.
Yeah.
And that kind of led us to hosting events, retreats, masterminds, like memberships. That kind of like sparked everything that we have now.
Wow. Wow, wow, wow. Okay. A lot of things stood out. And I wrote the ones down that I would love to dive deeper into with you because it's very interesting how some people have this inner knowing or just this inner drive of, I'm never going to let myself be poor.
Yeah.
And you had that experience at a very young age. And so I'm curious how and why that drove you and how it like has affected your life now.
Yeah. So it's so interesting because I felt this at a very young age, but then depending on your culture where you grow up, there's this relationship with money that people don't talk about.
Mm-hmm.
Like money's a man thing. Only the men talk, the men work. You are at home, especially how I grew up in my culture. Women are in the kitchen, women raise kids, women have no say in money. And having that thought at 8 years old, I think I started around 8 years old, but by 10, I was like, I'm never going to be poor. I remember where we lived in a little trailer house and it was raining and the water was coming through the house. So we had a bunch of pots and pans all over the living room. And I remember sitting there, my mom was changing the pans and we were trying to get the water out the house, but it's like a regular thing we do, but they grew up in Mexico with probably worse conditions than what we were living. And I remember being 10 and saying like, I don't want this. I don't want to have a house that has holes. I don't want to have a house where I don't want to like not ever wear new shoes because I buy all my stuff from the yard. So like, I remember being so angry at life.
Yeah.
Why me? Like, why did this happen to me? So from there stemmed like a need to achieve.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to be this, I'm going to do college. I don't care what career I fall into as long as I'm in the middle class. That was my thought. As long as I'm in the middle class, I made it.
Mm-hmm.
And it just became like a drive of I have nothing to lose. So I have everything to gain. And it just drove me until I just kept doing and doing and doing.
Yeah. I have such a similar story, but in obviously my own unique way. And I think I've shared this on the podcast before, but maybe I haven't. So this will kind of be news to my people. But when I was in 6th grade in middle school, I lived in a really, really rich neighborhood. It was, everywhere around was, very successful people.
Yeah.
But my dad was the janitor at the school. And so that was the only reason why we lived there. And all of my friends had houses and we lived in a really rundown apartment, right? And I still love that place. Like you look back, you're like, oh, like my little childhood home, right?
Yeah.
But I remember in middle school being so ashamed that I lived in an apartment and not a house that one day I had a friend of mine who I went and had a play date with them and their mom was going to drop me off at my house, but I didn't want them to know I lived in an apartment. Yeah. So I had them drop me off 3 houses down at an actual house and pretended to knock on the door. No one was there. And like a good parent, she was waiting for me to go inside. And then I couldn't, right? Because I didn't know who lived there. So I just told them, I was like, oh, my cousins live in the apartments down the street. So I'm just going to walk to their house. My dad's not home yet. And that was such a like enlightening moment in my life, because you do have those moments of realizing like, one, being like, you talked about this too, like that never happy feeling, right? Like, but finding that sense of like gratitude for where you came from, but also knowing that you want better for yourself.
Yeah.
And it's a battle, like a really inner battle to, be grateful for how you were raised and what you did have, and say that I'm ready for more. And I know I deserve more. And you're all about more. That's a big part of your brand. So talk to us about what more has done for you. And like, also you said something about like doing, and then you kind of discovered breath work and trauma healing. And yeah, I just want to dive into all that.
So it's so funny because it was a struggle for me. Like when you were talking about like realizing being grateful for where you are in life doesn't or shouldn't hold you back, I should say, from wanting more in life. But yet there's some correlation where it does.
Yeah.
Well, I can't want more because then I'm ungrateful for what I have. And that was really the crossroads of where I was at in life. I wanted more, but I also wanted more, not to the point where I made other people uncomfortable. Like I didn't want people to know I was 21 owning a 5-bedroom house with a pool, a 3-car garage. Like I didn't want people to know that because I didn't want them to feel like I was better than them, or this stigma that we have, right? Because we've learned like wealth is bad, money's bad, like all these things. And so that was like one conversation that was constantly like in my head I was always like, am I doing the right thing? Am I doing bad? Like what am I doing? But yet I wanted more. And the other thing that I wanted to touch on is you were talking about like the more that I was doing all the time. What I didn't know that was happening during this time is I became so attached to the more that I was doing checking off boxes, degrees, boom, 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 house, boom, car. I remember I must have been like 19, probably like 19 when I got my first BMW, and it was a brand new BMW off the lot. It had like 4 miles in it. It was brand new, and I bought it. And I remember at BMW they take the picture of you in the car, and it was this moment of like, okay, like I'm no longer poor. Like
Yeah.
these thoughts constantly came about. But what I didn't realize that was also happening, Sarah, was I was so attached to my achievements that I was losing Crystal. I
Yeah.
had no idea what she liked, what she wanted to do, what she stood for. It was just, how quickly can I get to this next goal? Check. How quickly can I get here? Check. Because subconsciously, my mind was like, hey, and I look back at this now and I've realized this, but at this time, Crystal didn't know this. I was trying to make myself like not be poor, but also I wanted to make my parents proud.
Yeah.
And the only way I knew how was I wanted them to be proud of what I had, that we made it out of the trailer, that we made it out of this, that we made it out of the car that didn't have AC. Like I wanted them to be proud of me, but I didn't know that that's what I wanted. So I was trying to look for their validation through my achievements. I was trying to be validated through what I had and not who I was.
Yes. Oof. That right there. I know someone listening can really, really resonate with that. So what was the shift like for you?
So when if I go back to the story, when I called off my wedding, when I sold the house, when I kind of went into the spirit, when I started dating somebody else, I had this big feeling of, wait a minute, I can't even make this guy happy. And I remember thinking back, like everything was like, what do you have in life? Because that's how I measured humans. I was
Yeah.
like, well, you have a house, you must be successful, you must be a hard worker. If you have this, and I remember this human being who lived at his mom's house and he didn't even have a job, I remember. And again, he was in a season of discovering himself, right? But I didn't know that.
Yeah.
And when everything ended, I remember thinking, I have a career, I have a house, I have this, and I can't even make this guy happy. Like, what's wrong with me? And I really fell into a state of feeling so broken. And when I felt so broken, I remember crying on my knees and I was praying and I was like, God, what is why am I here?
Mm-hmm.
Why am I born? Why I know you. And I've always grown up religious and I was just crying. And I remember feeling like, well, who are you, Crystal?
Mm.
And I didn't know. Like, I didn't know. I was so used to going out every weekend. I was used to partying. I was used to doing this. Every time I felt, I would run away from my feelings. I would go call my friends. We would go to the park. We would do things. But I didn't know who I was. And I had to get to that ugly season of my life to realize that this Crystal that I am right now got to be born. Because if all that ugly chapter of my life, if I didn't meet those people, I think I would still be that girl that's still like, how am I enough, but not too much to where I don't disrespect people. And now I'm in a season of my life where I look at myself in the mirror and I absolutely adore the woman that I see. I'm
Yeah.
so proud of her. I love her so much. I have so much compassion for her. And I know that the season of life that she's in, the money that she's bringing in, the career that she has is literally just the beginning, because there gets to be more and more and more. And it doesn't take away from me being grateful for where I come from, who I am, and what I'm currently doing. And I think once I had that realization, everything changed. And that's exactly where the whole movement was born. She's Made for More is a movement. It's a movement for women, impacting them to follow their more. And it's so cool to talk about that more part, because more means being more of a mom. It means being more of a wife, more of you, more of an entrepreneur, more of whatever makes you you.
Yeah.
Because your more is going to be different than my more. And your more might be, hey, I want to get married. I want to have kids. I want to be the best mom in the world. That's your more. That's going to fulfill you. That's going to make you happy. That's you. But then there might be somebody else who's like, hey, I don't want to have kids. I want to travel. I want to start a company, and I just want to live life traveling. That's your more too. And it's the She's Made for More is stepping into you, stepping into your soul purpose, and living unapologetically from the sense of, this is me, this is my more, and I'm going all in.
Yeah. I love that you redefined what more means, because I think a lot of people, when they see the word more, they think more materialistic things, more money, more clients, more houses, more cars, more purses, all of that. And it can look like that in a lot of ways. But I love how you redefined more of being more of who you really fucking are.
Yeah. And it's who you've always been. But we get I think as human beings, there's two versions of us. We're who we are born and who we learn to be.
Mm-hmm.
We learn to be this person, or I remember mom saying, stop, don't talk too loud because people are going to look at you, and this. And I've always been like a really loud person, and it's just naturally who I am. But as I got older, I kind of asked myself, well, am I being too much? That was my question all the time. And I didn't know why I would ask that. But now looking back, I remember my mom, and I know she didn't mean it in a malicious way, but it was her way of like, hey, now I look back, I was like, well, we were illegal, and she was illegal in this country. Like, she had to keep her daughter quiet, because then more eyes on her meant more people seeing her. So there's a lot of background to that now. Yeah. But I've realized, like, my more is who Crystal is, and step into her unapologetically. What excites her, what she loves, that's my more. The missions that are in my heart that for some reason were given to me.
Yeah. Speaking of missions in your heart, one of those is events, which is what we really just first connected on a couple of weeks ago. Yeah. And, I saw that you were hosting an event. I'm in the process of hosting my first event. And anytime you see someone doing what you want to do, it's just kind of like a sign, like, see, like, it is possible. Like, she's showing me it's possible right now. And that's how I felt when I first connected with you. So I'm very curious, what was the unfolding of your event or multiple events like for you, and how have they changed your life and your business and the impact that they've had?
So I'll take it back to our very first event. Our very first event started because in this whole journey of me, I realized, Crystal, you don't know who you are. And it's okay. Like, being in that season, I was like, it's okay. We get to discover her. So who are you? And I realized, like, I had this fake confidence. And that's the best way that I can describe it, where like I was outgoing, I wore the clothes, like I was out, but it was fake confidence, because I still behind closed doors suffered with anxiety and would cry myself to sleep and would wonder, why am I here? And in the season of discovering myself, I realized I have no love towards myself. I'm so good at loving other human beings. I'm so good at pouring into other people that I never slowed down to take care of me. So I went through this big self-love season. Like, what does that look like? What does it even mean to self-love? Like, what does self-love even mean? And I decided February is the month of love, where I've years and years poured into my partners and my mom and gifts. But when was the last time I poured into me? And I made an event in February, the month of love, that pours back into yourself. And it's for all the girls it's an event that focuses on self-love. And that event started because I was just like, hey, I hope that if there's a woman out there who feels disconnected from herself, she can come to this event. She can hear speakers. She can be part of workshops. She can leave the room feeling so embodied and connected to her that she feels unstoppable all of the year. And that's really where the first event just started.
Wow. Oh my gosh. Okay. I had a moment when you were talking about this one time. I had just quit my job, and I don't know if you felt this when you quit your teaching job, but I had a huge attachment to my career as like it was my identity. Like that was the only thing I really like. I didn't know myself, right? So it was like I knew who I was at work. I knew I was, the leader. I knew I was the person who would get shit done. I knew I was the, coordinator and the girl who followed up. Like I knew who I was at work, but I stripped that away from myself by quitting my job, and I was left with not knowing who I was.
Yeah.
And I had a moment with this girl that I went on a hike on one day. And I remember I admitted for the first time out loud that there was not a single thing that I actually liked about myself.
Yeah.
I didn't like the tone of my voice. I didn't like my hair. I didn't like my face. I didn't like my body. Like there was not a single thing I liked about myself. And could you imagine, like, maybe you guys can resonate with this. Maybe you've had this moment. Maybe you're there right now of realizing that you're living life completely disconnected from yourself and shaming yourself and hating yourself. Like, do you really think this is why we were put on this earth?
Yeah.
And I had that big moment as I was saying those things out loud. I was like, this can't be right. Like, this is not how I'm supposed to live.
Yeah.
And so I dove deep into rediscovering myself, loving myself, healing my relationship with my perception of myself, like all of that. And if I would have known you back then, like that would have been exactly what I freaking needed to kind of like collapse time. Because it was a long journey. I'll tell you that. So I can only imagine what it's like for those women who are in the room and immersed in self-love.
Yeah. So the event started and I had never hosted an event in my life. I don't know what I was doing. I don't know how to advertise. I was just like, we're going to do this event. And I went for it. We ended up getting 75 girls to attend. Like it just out of nowhere, people showed up. And then what was really cool is that people during lunch were calling their friends and saying, hey, you need to get over here. And we had more people coming in during lunch. So it ended up being an amazing experience.
Okay. During the event.
So we had it was
That is
like
so
at
epic.
11, like at 11 something. We started off with like 40 people. And then at 11 something, we had like a networking brunch. And people were calling their friends, hey, you need to get over here. Hey, you need to come to this event. Hey, it's so good. And people were attending, and it got so good that we had rented the room for like 40 something people. We didn't have chairs. So I was running to the lobby, having them bring me chairs. Like it was a whole thing. And the first thing I did post event was like, I beat myself up because I'm like, it went all wrong. It did this and that. Of course, like the critic in me, right? But then the testimonials started rolling in, and people quit their jobs after that event. People started companies after that event. People just changed their relationship with their husbands after that event. I said something that I'll never forget, but in the moment of me just talking, I said, if you're depending your happiness on your partner, you already failed yourself. I said, because it's very selfish of you to think that somebody else's responsibility to make you happy when the responsibility is yourself.
Yeah.
And I'm the first person to admit that my whole life I've put that burden on my partners because I didn't know how to do it. And I said, and now looking back, the biggest thing that I wish you can take away from this event is your happiness is your responsibility.
Yeah.
It's not anybody else's. And it's you empower yourself to be happy. Your partner empowers themselves to be happy. And together you come together and you become a powerhouse couple, not because you depend on each other, not because you need each other, but because you want each other.
Yeah.
And I said that at this event. And to this day, we have a testimonial that talks about that. They said, Crystal said that. And I realized, holy shoot, I'm giving my happiness to my partner. And when he doesn't come home and if he doesn't surprise me or he doesn't plan dates, it's all his fault and my day's ruined.
Yeah. I am a huge advocate, and I've had multiple podcasts on this, of being your own best lover. you've got to be your own best lover. I mean, whether you're in partnership or you're single, like it doesn't
Yeah.
matter. Being your own best lover has to be your number one priority, because without it, you're left with outsourcing your power, right?
Yeah.
Relying on external validation, relying on your partner to make you happy, relying on your partner to make you feel whole. When you're already whole, you just need to remember that.
Yeah. Yeah. But that's how our event started. It was just that movement of, let's see if we can help people love themselves better. And then from there, it turned into people loving themselves so much that they were like, hey, I want to make an impact in this world. Hey, I want to show up in this world. And through that first event where I didn't really know what we were doing, that's where the whole movement started. She's Made for More brand started from that event. Like, you love yourself so much that you realize you're allowed to have more. You're made for more. What is your more? You decide what that looks like. But that's really where the event started. And what happened was, in that event, women became lifelong friends.
Yeah.
Women started supporting it. Women realized, hey, you don't like how much you weigh. I don't like how much I weigh. And I've been letting this stop me, but you're over there just dancing your life away. Then you were the permission slip that I needed to realize I'm allowed to love my body in the season, but also want to change it too. And all these profound conversations had happened in the room. And there's so much power in being in a room. And for me, that was the moment where I realized, for the women attending your event, Sarah, that event is going to change their life.
Yeah.
Because of who they're going to meet, because what they're going to hear, because of what some, like me saying about that happiness, like, don't give it to your partner. I didn't even know I was going to say it that day. It was just in the spur of the moment. That's what came out. And I didn't even remember that that's what I said. But for some reason, this woman grasped to it so much that she strengthened the relationship within her husband. She quit her job. She's built a 6-figure business now,
Yeah.
through being in that room. And for some reason, those words resonated with her. Being in the room is the ultimate permission slip. And I've heard so many people say this, but it's so true. It's the ultimate permission slip to step into your more, to unapologetically be whoever you want to be, because you're not alone and there's power in a collective. And that's
There
what a
really is.
room does.
Yeah. I have chills. I have chills thinking about these rooms. And, I mean, you host there, you just spoke about hosting your first event. So the where I'm at right now, where there's so much that I don't know. Like, I don't know what's going to happen. I know my intention and I know how I want to make you feel in that room. And I know the speakers and like some of the logistics, but I don't think you can even predict the type of experience or magic and transformation and healing and connection that actually can unfold until you're just there.
Yes.
So, as excited and kind of unknown as the woman attending are feeling, I'm feeling that too.
Yeah.
And I'm just so excited, especially hearing from someone who hosts these events quite regularly, like knowing that this is like, that's the result of just putting yourself in these rooms and having these conversations and meeting these women. Oh my God. Like,
Yeah.
it's
And
me.
also remembering that if the vision in your heart was given to you to put an event, there's somebody out there that needs this event.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't realize that until that first event where I'm like, everything went wrong, this and that. I don't know. Like, I'm a failure. Like, all these thoughts came through my mind. And then when I saw the testimonials come in, I was like, what?
Yeah.
And then we were going to do a summit. This was like a separate event, but we are going to do a summit, and then COVID happened.
Mm-hmm.
So we had to go online. And this is like the first time our events were really online, because I think before then everything was like in person.
Totally.
So we started doing, and it was a whole other shift. And the same thing happened. I'm like, oh, this event was horrible. Oh, oh my gosh. Like, we lost signal at one point. And I remember the testimonials came in after that. And one of our attendees was like, because of this event, I realized my worth. Because of this event, I started a brand. Because of this event, I decided to go all in on my health, my life, become the best mom I can for my kids. But I'm like, really? Like, the event where we lost power and everybody fell through, like the internet went down? Like, but again, if the event was put in your heart, Sarah, there's so many women. And here's the thing. you know you're meant to be in this room. Like if you're having the itch, the little pull that maybe I meant to be at Sarah's event, then you're already meant to be there. Like there's already room for you there. So even the slightest thing of like, I wonder what this event is, that's your go sign.
Absolutely.
Like that's your go sign. And those people that are meant to be in this room with you and that you are going to meet, the experiences that are going to happen are going to be beyond what you can imagine because you had the courage to put it together.
Yeah. And it does take courage. I know there's people listening right now who are really inspired by people hosting events and are probably thinking like, oh, I could never. Like she could do it, but I probably can't, even if you're getting the call. And I'm sure you could speak to this too. Like you probably had some fear hosting an event.
Yeah. Well, I still do. That's
Yeah.
that's the thing that I was telling my clients the other day. I was like, I still do. Like half the time I still think, can I really pull this off? Like we have our event next Saturday. It's going to be on February 18th and 19th here in California. And I was having this thought last night where I was like, can we really do this? And we've already had this event for 4 years now. This particular event is going to be on for 4 years, but that fear, I don't think ever really goes away.
Yeah.
It's what if, and these weird thoughts come into my head, like, what if I'm the only one there and nobody shows up because something happens and nobody, like these thoughts come up. I don't think we ever stop being afraid, but it's truly remembering that if the vision was given for you, it's already yours.
Yeah.
Like that this event and trust me, I don't think anybody's going to have an event like I had my very first year where we ran out of chairs. We didn't have this, like we got there and there was no projector. For some reason, I didn't know that the contract didn't have a projector. I was supposed to get it separate. So there was like all of these things that happened that could have like potentially put me in a phase in a phase of like, this is horrible. I just went with it. I was like, okay, this is what's going to be this. And the testimonials still were amazing.
Yeah.
So,
and I think, oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, so that if the event is calling you, whatever little vision you have, you're meant to put it on.
Yeah. And I think it's also such a great reminder too for me, but for anyone else listening who is like trying to work up the courage to host their own event. It's like, first of all, like you're allowed to be afraid and still move forward.
Yes.
Second of all, like the things that you're actually afraid of, like the projector and like not having enough seats, like, that stuff, like it doesn't end up actually mattering compared to what is actually felt. And I think that's so important to remember. And something that I'm going to take away from this conversation is like the little things that I think people are like, oh, they might judge me for this, or what if this goes like that? And like, none of that will actually matter when they feel the energy of the room and they feel the words that the speakers and I speak. And yeah.
It's going to be the experience. Like I said, it's the permission slip. And this is like random, but I have an episode on my podcast. I'll check which one it is and I'll let you know. But I have an episode where I actually interview an attendee for my very first event.
How cool.
I interview an attendee and I let her like, what was your experience? And you can hear the excitement in her voice and how it went. And then I'm also telling her like all the stuff that was happening back scenes. Like did you guys know that we didn't have lunch? Did you guys know that this was happening? Did you know that we were like an hour away out from lunch? And she's like, we had no idea. So you get to see both perspectives, like her from being an attendee and me, who I was like running around thinking like, this is horrible. But the reason why that episode's on is because I really wanted people to remind them that we are our biggest critics when it comes to these events.
Yeah.
As long as you put it on, as long as you go through with it, somebody is going to have the most amazing experience because you said yes to your heart. You said yes to this vision. Now they're going to say yes to theirs too.
Yep.
Yeah.
I love that. Okay. I'm curious if you have any last lingering thoughts or words that come to you around events and like specifically to the woman who might need the permission slip to host the event.
I think the biggest one is just remembering that you can plan and plan and plan, and you can wait for that time when you're ready, but you're never going to be ready.
No.
Like I can do it next year and the year after that, and I can plan. But at one point you have to grab your calendar and put the date on the calendar and say, this is what I'm going to do my event. Because if you don't see it, you're going to keep waiting till you're ready. And that day is never going to come.
Yep.
You have to put pen to paper and pencil, or however you want to say that. Put it on the calendar and say, hey, I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
And
It's
are you going to
so
be fully
true.
ready? No.
Yeah, you guys, like, this is so freaking real. Can I just say, like, like, some people get inspired to host events because, like, they're like, oh, wow, like, I just went to an event. It was so amazing. And like, now I want to host an event. I had zero event experience. And when the download came to me of hosting this event, everything in me except my heart was like, no way. Like, what? Like, you don't know what you're doing. You've never done this before. You've never even been to an event, right? Like, I had every reason not to, every reason. Public speaking trauma, like loving an online community, like every excuse
Yeah.
I could find. I picked it up and it wasn't enough. It
Yeah.
wasn't enough to outweigh the knowing that I had in my heart. And you've just got to trust that knowing. You've got to move forward. And yeah, this is so important.
Yeah.
And I agree with you. You've just got to put it on the calendar and move forward.
Yeah. And the other thing is asking for help.
Mm-hmm.
Like that is huge. I didn't, now looking back at it, there's so many things that I could have leaned on people for help. Like there's people in your life that genuinely want to help you,
Mm-hmm.
that genuinely want to see you succeed, whether these are family or friends or whoever. Sometimes having a few friends like saying, hey, I want to host my event. Would you be willing to help me?
Mm-hmm.
They will say, yes. How can I help you? Giving away like things like, okay, you're in charge of tickets. Like how every time I sell a ticket, can I let you know so you keep charge? Like let people help you.
Yeah.
Because the other thing with the events is like I don't think, I mean, I'm sure there's event experts, but us when you start, when you have the download for your event, you're not an event expert, and that's okay. You don't need to be one. You don't need to have background experience and all that. Like lean on people,
Yeah.
ask for support,
Yeah.
and let others be there with you because that's huge.
Yeah, even with just like ideas and like having a second set of eyes and like, hey, I just created the itinerary. How does this look? Like, I mean, Brittany, and the audience, my community knows Brittany. But like so many things I bounced off of her, like,
Yeah.
hey, like, does this itinerary make sense? And she's like, no, like you're probably gonna want a little bit of this here and a little bit of that there, or like, hey, I'm thinking about doing a VIP happy hour. Like, is it okay to do it in the same room? And she's like, it doesn't really feel exclusive if you, or yeah, exclusive if you do it that way. So maybe in a separate room, like so many things that you just wouldn't think about. So even just having someone to bounce those ideas off of and to have a second set of eyes, that is so freaking helpful
Yeah.
because you're
Yeah.
not meant to do it alone.
Yeah. We're not meant to do life alone. And I think that there's so much limiting beliefs that come from like generational beliefs, but that's another story for another time of like, we learn that we got to figure it out alone. Oh, we have to do it. That's how it's going to make it successful. No, it's not. Like we're in a season of life. And here's where I really encourage people to be so unapologetic with life. I'm like, we're in a season of life where like hard work is not a badge of honor to wear. Like, oh, I took 20 years to figure this thing out. Like, oh, that's not a badge of honor. Like struggling isn't a badge of honor to wear.
Thank
Like
you.
we're struggling. We're tied to the struggle.
Yeah.
That's not a badge. It's a badge. It's like, hey, I am so good at getting help. I could 5 people, my problem will be solved in 5 minutes
Yeah.
versus taking 10, 15 hours to figure it out alone.
Yeah. So
Allow the world to help you. Yeah.
well, Crystal, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for just bringing your value and your gifts to this space because I benefited from it. I know the people listening are. Where do you like to hang out the most? Because I know that the people listening are going to want to connect with you.
So I'm always on Instagram. That's my jam. You can see my life there. I also have my own podcast. And then for anybody that I don't know when you're going to release this, but we do host our annual self-love event that I just talked about in this event. We host it every February. And it will be actually next Saturday, February 18th and 19th in California as well.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Well, if you guys don't attend this year, because I don't think it'll be up by then, you've got to go to the next one. I will most likely be there because I will be heading back to California, which is another conversation I need to update my people on. But yeah, I will be there next year. I'm so excited. I'm so happy that we've made this connection. You guys go follow Crystal, connect with her. If you're in the area, or even if you're not in the area, like go to her events. They truly, clearly are something special. And if you enjoyed this episode, share it with someone you love, someone you think that might want to host an event and could benefit from this conversation. Like send it their way. Let us know that you enjoyed it. And as always, thank you for listening. And I'll talk to you soon.
Talk to you soon. Thank you for having me.